I welcome you today. We are going to be doing a webinar on smart tips for a successful Halloween for children with selective mutism. This can also apply to teenagers as well. I do encourage you to think about questions you might have, and we do have a chat feature. So feel free to send some chat through, and we will get to those questions at the end. I do ask that you allow me to finish this webinar, and then we can address some questions. Interestingly enough, a lot of the things we're going to talk about today may even, or that even you're thinking about, may be covered in this webinar. So I'm super excited to do this with you. I put this together based on my years of experience working with this population. And again, I'm excited to get started. I just want to give you a brief background to what we're going to be doing and social communication anxiety treatment, where I have viewed and research has been done. And I feel strongly that selective mutism is a social communication anxiety disorder where mutism is a symptom. I say that with conviction because too many people focus on selective mutism being about speaking and not speaking. And unfortunately, that's missing the boat, and it often causes avoidance, and it causes more anxiety when we focus too much on the children or the teens or the adults not speaking when it's a symptom, and we have to look deeper. We need to respect the individual's baseline stages of social communication at home, in the real world and community, and in the school or workplace setting. And when we understand their baseline stage, we have somewhere to begin with to be able to prompt social communication across the bridge. And we need to know when to bridge up and when to bridge down based on who's present and so forth and the size of the group. Also have learned over the course of my career that there are whys to SM, which are reasons why an individual develops SM and why it continues. Timidity being probably the most common, but social anxiety goes along with that, as well as sensory processing challenges or being highly sensitive, having some speech and language difficulties, which is about 30 to 40% of individuals that we work with SM, have an underlying speech and language, either developmentally or acquired from years not having give, take, back, forth of social communication. Being bilingual, trilingual, multilingual is a factor into the development and maintenance of SM. Also, learning challenges such as processing difficulties, central auditory processing disorder being the number one. Also, having too much expectation, push, 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 and too much expectation will cause a lot of anxiety and reinforcement. And then there's lack of engagement or doing, and the individual shadows you, and then there's actually less expectation for social communication. So we have to have a balance between expectation and also minimizing the need to push to speak and so forth. So I'm going to incorporate a lot of that into what we're talking about today, about helping children feel more comfortable with Halloween, and I'm excited to get started. I want to kind of talk about the golden rules because Halloween should be fun and an awesome time to practice social communication. But here's some golden rules that we're going to incorporate as we are planning exposures, getting ready for Halloween. And again, you can take the word Halloween and think about different parties, gatherings, festivities, holidays, and so forth. I focus this one obviously on Halloween. Comfort precedes communication, and progress does not occur in a group. We want to build comfort and do strategies away from the group. What does that mean? It means that we can't expect an individual to be comfortable and communicative in a larger group. We need to start smaller, and that's usually involving a buddy process, get-togethers, comfortable environments away from, let's say, the school environment, small group opportunities, in a classroom, out of the classroom, clubs, activities that are not large and lots of people environments. Progress tends to occur best when it's away from that. Social engagement via frontline and handover takeover will benefit all children with selective mutism. It doesn't matter if they're verbal. Too often as parents, we end up buffering and protecting the children. And what happens is they learn that behavior and they don't develop the appropriate social communication skills, even if they have the ability to be verbal, because we tend to do for them and more outgoing individuals do the same. So frontline, putting an individual in front of you, giving them the opportunity to hand and take stimulates social communication, and it is the fuel to progression across the social communication bridge. Just to go back to this slide for a minute, the different stages there, you can see in stage 0 when an individual is not communicating, they're shut down, they're overwhelmed, they may be talking to somebody else. That frontline and handover takeover is a way to help an individual begin to develop engaging and go across the bridge to the various stages. Demystification is critical. I'm amazed how often parents have told me that they don't want to talk about this with their child. The therapist has never brought it up to their child. So the child doesn't really have an awareness to their feelings regarding social communication. This doesn't mean you sit a 3-year-old down and you tell them they have selective mutism, but helping children and teens understand their feelings, what it feels like in different settings to be able to engage and socialize and communicate and being open about it in a very matter of fact way. We tend to use feelings charts. We use the bridge to help them realize where they are on the bridge. And believe it or not, very young children relate to feelings of being scared and afraid. Whereas children get older, it's more difficult and scary. And it's more difficult versus scary when they're younger. And that's because the behavior becomes learned and conditioned. Also, we're going to incorporate in this webinar the importance of asking and answering questions. Too often I hear, and I see this in 504s and IEPs, don't ask the child a question because you're going to make them anxious. Guess what? If you don't ask, there's no chance to answer. I'm not even talking about verbal. I'm talking about nonverbal. The action of question, answering, asking, based on their stage and their comfort is, again, a fuel to crossing the bridge. If you don't have opportunities to answer or ask a question, you're going to end up shadowing and you're going to miss out on a lot of opportunities. One of the things we're going to incorporate as you hear me talk about this is the need to minimize an individual's thinking and processing. Think about it. When you're anxious, when you're nervous, you can't think straight. How often do we hear, I'm so nervous, I can't think straight? When someone's doing a presentation, they may have a script to help them know what to say and they prepare themselves. We're going to be utilizing visuals, hearing choices with the last answer correct. We're going to prepare the child. We're going to help them understand and we're going to minimize their need to think and process because if we can help do that, we're going to help lower anxiety. So let's think about the home environment when we think about Halloween. There's something I talk about a lot in my podcast, Unspoken Words, and a lot of my writings and at Communicamp is something called look, listen, and learn. And I teach parents this when I'm in treatment with them in session 2. And what does that mean? Look, listen, and learn from your child. They can tell you what they're feeling just by their body language. I want you to be aware of your own expectations as you think about Halloween. I know as a parent, I remember when my children were young, I couldn't wait for Halloween. I couldn't wait for the parties. I couldn't wait to have kids over. I couldn't wait to go out for Halloween. It was just as much fun for me as I was hoping it was fun for my children. I want you to be aware of your expectations and are they realistic in terms of what your child is capable of doing at this moment in time to have a successful and an anxiety-free Halloween. I hear parents often in sessions say to me, I really need them to say trick or treat this year. That's going to be our goal. Meanwhile, I just started working with them and they're not even engaging in the real world. Handing and taking is difficult for them. So why would I use talking as a goal? If anything, that's going to cause more avoidance, more anxiety, and it's going to cause the child to not want to enjoy and probably not even want to go out for Halloween or be part of Halloween. So I do want you to think about what your expectations are. And if you're working with a clinician, please talk to them about what the realistic expectations are for your child to have a successful stress-free Halloween. Yes, we're going to work on exposures. Yes, we see this as many opportunities to practice, but I also don't want you to be thinking that you need to cross the bridge into speech because that's the goal that you have if your child isn't yet there. What does Halloween look like for your family? As the years have gone on, Halloween has changed. Sometimes kids are going out in their neighborhoods. Sometimes they're doing events at their school. Sometimes they're not going out at all. So what does it look like for your family and what are you comfortable with? And I had to add that at this time because I know that Halloween is not as straightforward as it used to be. So think about what it means for your family and then start to think about how to set that up. I have rarely met even a timid child who doesn't tend to enjoy or feel confident by having a role in the encounter. Sometimes it's somebody just in charge of pouring the candy in a bowl or opening the door or making the cookies for the treats for school. Give them a role. It's a confidence booster. Also, if you have a child that has selective mutism or social anxiety and they have a younger sibling, a younger cousin, a friend of yours who has a younger child, having them be a helper for that younger individual is also another way to kind of build their confidence. And it gives them that kind of, I'm like the big shot role. And it really is amazing how when they can take care of somebody else or have a role in that encounter, they're more willing to be distracted and have a more successful social communication opportunity. Believe it or not, preparing and practicing even a dress rehearsal. I've had families literally the week before Halloween practice Halloween in the house because they know that it can be anxiety provoking. And for an adult, a year goes by. That's not a long period of time. But for a 5-year old, a 7-year old, even a 10-year old, a year is a long time. So, what they did last year, especially after COVID, it's going to be a little different this year, and maybe more kids are getting out there more. And how often do kids walk around in the late afternoon or evening? So, again, preparing and practicing doing a dress rehearsal is a great way to lower anxiety and prepare for the event. Also, I say costumes are optional. And I know some of you may be thinking, why are you saying that? It's Halloween. You have to dress up. Well, there's some kids that love it. I have kids in my office that love to dress up any time of the year. They'll put a mask on, they'll put glasses on, they'll dress in some costumes in my office because it's a disguise and that's where they feel comfortable. In fact, I have plenty of kids when they wear a mask or glasses or even put something up in front of their face, they'll start actually progressing into speech because they feel like they're in a disguise. So for some kids, having that disguise or a costume is actually a fuel and is a lowered anxiety. But then you have the children that don't like it. They don't want to dress up. They feel like they're in the spotlight and it's a sense of attention on them. So again, costumes are optional. They certainly can participate in Halloween, but it's about what is that child comfortable with? What can we kind of help them get through if it's something that's not like unrealistic? In other words, if you're saying everyone has to wear a costume, but meanwhile your child feels anxious because of the social anxiety and the fear of everyone looking at them, I would ask you to change your expectations. One thing I recommend, and one of the things I talked about in terms of comfort precedes communication and progress doesn't happen in a group. So we want to build comfort and do strategies away from the group. So, what are the most common ways to do that? Get-togethers. Younger children, it's play dates. For older kids, it becomes a get-together. Having this at Halloween time is such a wonderful opportunity to have a get together at your home, which is what we want to do anyway, because building that connection, that comfort away from the group, away from the classroom is often where kids will make the progress. And then we will begin to transition them back into the classroom and do fade ins, etc. But because they may progress into speech at home, it's a much easier transition in the school environment. Having it in the comfort of their own home versus a friend's home is recommended unless there's somebody that you know pretty well and that child and your child has been there many times. So if it's possible to have a get together in your home, I recommend that. Making treats to give out. Remember I said confidence builder, give them a role, big shot role. Again, it's a way for them to be in charge. This is a picture of a little girl that knew the recipe in advance. So knowing the recipe, preparing in advance, and she was able to read the directions to the recipe to her friends that came over. Now, for a child that's nonverbal, handing, taking, where parents facilitate, Rebecca, would you hand the pumpkin to Robert? Robert, would you give the jimmies or the sprinkles to Sally? And that's stimulating social communication and parents bringing your child into social communication and across the bridge. Something as simple as a choice. Do you want to add the sprinkles or do you want to use the icing? That simple question versus tell your friend what you want to do. That's a totally different way to help your child make the progress by asking your child to talk. And are you going to talk at the play date or the get together? Please don't do that. Set it up because it's through the tasks. It's how you ask questions, when you ask questions, where you ask questions, that your child will make the progress. You notice I wrote the word buddies here and capitalized. I can't tell you how often I work with families. I do school consults where the child does not have a connection to their classmates at all outside of school. It's very difficult to make progress in a group setting. If you have the ability to have a get together at your home for Halloween or any time, the more the better. The more that you can include classroom buddies, the more the better, because that's going to help with the smoother transition within the school setting. For Halloween, something I recommend is a pizza party or a little dinner gathering or just a snack gathering before you're going out, because by having the kids come over to your house, it's a wonderful playing field to kind of get them comfortable, get them going, having fun. And that transition to start going out for Halloween or being part of a party is really, really helpful. And I'm amazed how that simple act of having a few buddies over can really make a difference. Now, you don't want a lot of kids because remember I said loud, large, lots of people environments can overwhelm some of our kids, especially our more socially anxious, sensory sensitive kids. So I don't recommend having 10 friends over unless that's something your child thrives with and can do. But for many kids we work with, having a smaller gathering is going to be more comfortable for them. Again, practicing skills, as I said, wonderful opportunity for parents to facilitate social communication strategies based on movement across the bridge. So if your child's baseline is handing and taking, you're now going to start bringing them across by having questions. Maybe you're able to bring them in through choice or direct questions. Maybe it's written down and they can read a recipe or they can read a word or they're playing games and so forth. So again, your treatment professional should guide you to the next steps. When I talk about the social communication bridge, I just want to be clear that I'm not trying to ever keep a child at their baseline, but I need to know their baseline to know how to move. Make it fun, fun, fun. Go back to your expectations. Don't have a mission in mind. Have a get together, have a task. It's often over the task and the activity they're doing that comfort is built, they're distracted, and progression of communication. These are two pictures that I put in here because I thought they were wonderful examples. Very often parents say, I have a child over from the class, but my child just sits there and then the child ends up playing with my child with SM's older sibling. I recommend that you have things already set up. And this is what this, in this case, this is a art project. It could be baking. Art projects are wonderful because it gives you the opportunity to prompt, hand take, asking questions, bringing them in to various social communication opportunities through just doing art, just by the way you ask questions and who you're pairing them with. The scavenger hunt out in the backyard, developing it, have your child develop it. Go to the store, buy the supplies, do that exposure using the strategies because they're going to be excited to do this with a friend or two, and they're going to be more distracted, more interested in doing it. And you're more likely to have success doing exposures in stores as you're buying the supplies for the get together. So you can see how you're incorporating everything in what you do. Halloween parties out at others' homes or in the public. This can even relate to school parties as well. I need you to be aware, again, to the loud, large, lots of people environments. Fewer kids, smaller environments, quieter locations. Now we think about a party, that's anything but that, right? Some ways to help in that situation is if you're going to a friend's house, a relative's house, somebody that might know your child or you feel comfortable, I would educate them on the realistic way to engage with them and to ask them questions. We have a document that we'll include in the supportive materials to this webinar called About My Child. It's a way for you to educate others, and we guide you through that process about how to ask questions, when to ask questions, what to focus on, and so forth. And it really does help when you give that to family members, family friends, coaches, teachers, and others as how to interact with your child. One thing I would recommend is to respect a child's warm-up time. It's really interesting. I talked about this on a podcast not too long ago. If you think about a dozen roses, um, you're going to have roses open up at different times. Many kids with SM, especially our more timid children, our more sensitive individuals, they tend to warm up much slower and they open up a lot later than someone else. And what some parents tell me is, well, the party was only an hour and a half. By an hour and 25 minutes, she started to leave my side. So there's things you can do to help prepare your child for some of these gatherings. One is to arrive early, visit the place beforehand if you need to, go with a buddy. I had a client last week who I was working with them, and I said, you're going to a Halloween party. We just discussed it. And we talked about arriving early. We talked about bringing us something that the child had made because they could feel proud of that. And that's a way to do handover, takeover. But what about having a friend over? She has a best friend. Bring that buddy with you. Encourage that. Go from your house to that party or gathering. It's amazing how much that helps. Also, being in charge of the baby, being in charge of a younger sibling, a younger cousin, gives them a role. And be prepared for common questions. Remember, I talked about the golden rules and I said, understanding the give, take, back, forth of social communication, question, answering, asking, and minimizing the need to think and process. Well, knowing what the common questions and statements are is a way to do that. So, what are common questions that people will ask? And I think some of our listeners might be thinking, wow, I never thought of that. Yes, because we want to minimize their need to think and process. We want it to be right there. Having a lookout for questions, I spy the questions. Let's see who says, how are you? Let's see how many people say, what are you for Halloween? And you can even chart that. So I'll have an I spy chart where the kids will write their common questions down and the younger children will put stickers on the common questions. And we go through it almost like a survey or a poll to be able to see how many people ask those common questions. What is your younger sibling? This is a big question. Again, it's not uncommon. So your child may be more likely to answer questions regarding their younger sibling or younger cousin than themselves. It always starts with a greeting and always ends with a salutation like bye. So hello and bye. Also, if you're going out for Halloween, thank you. So those are the big 5 words, right? Hi, bye, yes, no, and thanks. But think of it as a sandwich question with some of these common questions. Hi is at the top, the bun, bye is at the bottom, the bun. And we develop these sandwich questions in our practice where the kids are prepared for the greetings, they're prepared for the hellos, how are yous, they're prepared for the bye, have a good day type questions, and then the common questions, whether it's Halloween or anywhere and everywhere that you go. I'm also a big advocate of charting in a fun way because it allows for accountability. Charting's not meant to be difficult. It's not meant to give you a headache and more work to do, but it does allow for accountability and a sense of inner control. Here's some cute ideas. I had a few patients that I work with that didn't feel comfortable with a costume, but when the parents suggested that with their brother, they could be the matching Mario brothers, guess what? The child was so excited about it. They went out to the store, they did an exposure. The mom brought them in for social communication by, excuse me, miss, can you help us? Turned to her child and said, are we looking for Mario or Lario? And he laughed and said, Mario, right then and there, just by the way the parent brought that child into social communication. And because he was motivated, because he was excited, because he was distracted, it worked. And so that's a wonderful opportunity to help kids connect with their buddies and also feel more comfortable if they don't want to do a standout-ish where they can be twinsies. You can do this with friends, you can do this with siblings, even parents. I think of an example of a Halloween party many, many, many years ago when I worked with a client and she was terrified of the Halloween parade at school. She was all about it. She was a Minnie Mouse, and the mom was like, I need her to do the parade. I need her to do the parade. It was really important, and the child really wanted to do the parade. So I was very realistic, and I said, listen, what if you dressed up? And she says, I am going to dress up. So she dressed up as a big Minnie Mouse. The mom went in the Halloween parade with her child. And you know what? The child had a fabulous time. The next year, did it with a buddy, no problem at all. And at that point was completely verbal. But for that year, the child felt very comfortable having their parent with them. But obviously, that's not always going to happen, but having a buddy in the parade and so forth. So again, that kind of where look, listen, and learn, and where is your child in this process, and what is it about them? What are they telling you? What is their comfort? And not fighting them on it, but working with them. I needed to talk about costumes. One of the things I see happen a lot with Halloween is the scary costumes. It seems like it's gotten scarier over the years. So I want to be really, really careful about this. We have to kind of prepare our children. And there's a lot of parents that don't even go out for Halloween because some of the older kids are going out and it is really super scary. So it can be a great disguise for many kids to hide behind their costume, but it can also be scary when they see others. Costumes may be a great step again to engage and interact with others, but again, very scared of the scary costumes. Sometimes we've had kids dress up in scary costumes at home. They put wigs on, makeup, and so forth. Be aware of sensory challenges with a lot of these kids because we have the sensory processing challenges. And just being a highly sensitive individual, they tend to be more uncomfortable with a lot of fabrics and so forth. And they're very sensitive to the feel of fabrics. Talk about the types of costumes you might see, but put it out there, the scary costumes. Usually it's the more popular type of characters that are out on the media that you'll see out and about. And look online. Go to a Halloween store online, even any of the big stores. Just look at the scary types of costumes that you might see. That has helped a lot of kids. Even them dressing up in a costume at home and switching off and seeing all the different costumes has helped to kind of desensitize them. I do recommend for most of our families go out earlier when there's not a ton of kids around, when it's still light, less people in the area. I know this is kind of a scary time in life, so many families, again, aren't going out. But if you're doing costume parties, even at home, or Halloween trick or treat at the school, and so forth, or your religious location, your community center, again, it's the same concepts, being aware of all of this. I spy the types of costumes you see by talking about I Spy, you're being on the lookout. When I'm encouraging I Spy the common question, I Spy the type of costumes, I Spy whatever it is, you're asking that child to be on the lookout. When you're looking for things and thinking about things, you're actually bypassing the amygdala, which causes that shutdown. So kids are way more likely, adults as well, to not shut down when they're thinking and doing something. Isn't that interesting? So our goal for Halloween is to lower anxiety. Again, look, listen, and learn. What is your child telling you? And listen to them. Don't fight them and don't try to bargain with them. Take them from where they're at in a fun way. Utilize that buddy process. What I like our listeners to think about is how can you utilize that buddy process? Are there school peers that you can invite over? Are there neighbor friends that you can get together with beforehand? What can you do to implement a buddy process for Halloween? Be fun, be silly. Our kids love to be goofy for the most part. Humor is distracting, it's anxiety lowering. Have a good time. Don't see this as a time to, again, he has to do it, she has to do it. Be fun and upbeat. The more expectation we have, the more anxiety your child has. The goal is to know what is a realistic expectation. And that's where your treatment professional can guide you. Because we absolutely want to use this as opportunities for exposures and opportunities for progression of social communication. But we need to be realistic and accept your child where they're at. I want you to look at Halloween as an opportunity to practice greetings. I listed the different stages here. The waving game, how many people can we wave to? Maybe just waving to cats and dogs or people in buses. I mean, that's a way to stimulate engaging. Racing to wave with siblings or friends, that's initiating, trying to beat the person to wave. Again, you're respecting the stages on the bridge, but you're also practicing exposures and goals. Playing a tape of Hi Bye. I had a little boy last year. He was about 10 actually, and he had it on his voice memo on his phone. And he would go up to every house and go trick or treat. And he played his voice. And by the fourth house, he started to say it by himself. So using a tape recorder or some sort of way to tape and play, that might be something your child is willing to do. Again, don't push it. Bringing your child in for trick or and your child finishes it by saying treat, that's a way to bring them into social communication as well. Using stage two, using the intermediary where maybe they tell you and you give the answer. The hi bye copy game. This is when children are verbal. Someone says hi, they say hi. Beating the person is initiating. So you try to beat them to say hi or bye. So it's playing these games or doing these goals for older kids, it's utilizing the exposures, but knowing what you're doing. So if you're going out and about or people are coming over, practicing these things in an upbeat, positive way, charting it, getting points, getting tallies, seeing how many people we can say hi to first. Just make it fun, but you're practicing the skills. And by practicing it in this type of an environment, is going to be very helpful because they're motivated to do it. They're more motivated because they're engaging in an activity that they want to do. Sometimes I've had kids in a group say trick or treat all at once. Thank you for coming. And by doing that, they're starting to use their words, but with someone else. So again, meeting them where they're at, how can you kind of stimulate them, prompt them, facilitate them to go a little further across the bridge, but respecting their feelings and using the 0 to 3 scale for little guys and the 0 to 5 scale for older people. It really is helpful. And we help them understand by utilizing the bridge. So a lot of our kids will make bridges as they're doing this, and they'll plot where they are on the bridge, and we'll goal set. You see this little skeleton guy holding a sign. For some of our kids, just doing nonverbal holding a sign is progress for them. When you're out and about, prepare the child in advance. Where are you going? What to expect? Who's going to be with you? Something as subtle as that. It's amazing how preparing in advance for where you're going to go is so helpful. We talked about the bridge and the opportunity. Too often, parents are taking the candy, giving the candy, and the child's just shadowing. Front line, allowing the child to go up with a parent or sibling in front of and taking the candy, or hand over takeover where you're taking it with them or they're handing it over. Again, very easy opportunities to do this in the home environment if they're not wanting to go out, but even when you're out and about. We talked about the waving hi bye, bringing into conversation, do you want a Hershey bar or a Milky Way? Something as easy as a choice to say is so much better than tell them what you want or answering for them. We don't want to answer for them, and we don't want to say to them, go tell them what you want. By bringing them in with a choice with the right answer second is a very safe way. Hershey bar or Milky Way? No answer. Hershey bar or Milky Way? Tell me. Let them lean in and tell you. Before you know it, you'll be able to say, what do you want? Or the person will say, what do you want? And they'll say Milky Way. But for a step in the process, I want to respect the use of the verbal intermediary because it's very, very powerful. And choices are very powerful with the right answer second. That also minimizes the need to think and process, right? The more that you hear it, the more that you see it, the more that you're minimizing the need to think and process, which leads me to the script. Hi, trick or treat, and so forth. Having a script and knowing what to say is an anxiety lowering technique. And there's lots of kids that feel very comfortable with a script. We have the big 5 bracelets, hi, bye, yes, no, and thanks. Some families will have like a little band that says trick or treat, and the child just simply reads it. Just by doing that, they're verbal. Again, meeting the child where they're at. Things to remember about Halloween. We talked about a lot, but there's just so much to continue to talk about. Halloween is supposed to be enjoyable for the entire family. Allow for warm up. A child to cling to the parent in the beginning is not uncommon. Don't fight it. I'm not all about clingers, but I also know that's a child saying, I'm not comfortable yet, mom and dad. Can you just let me be a little close? And there's nothing wrong with that. The more that you push the child away, the more that they cling. But if you get there early, you bring a friend, you think about what's happening, they're more likely to separate. Respect their stage on the bridge and the whys of SM. I need to give you just a quick example. I had a boy in my practice. He was about 12. He had speech and language challenges. His ability to put his thoughts together and say it were difficult. So he had a script and he was verbal throughout. A recent Halloween party at school. They did an early Halloween this year because of some of the other holidays and things like that. He ended up being completely verbal in the activity they were doing just by using the script. So speech and kids with speech and language difficulties tend to do better with scripts because they don't have to think about putting their thoughts together and say them. Again, look, listen, and learn. What is your child trying to say to you? And by their nonverbal behaviors, and really respect and talk to them about that and help them understand this is supposed to be fun, play games, have a good time, include the buddies, and so forth.